Oh, that was
Hey,
a quick
everybody.
countdown. How's it going?
How's it going?
Yeah, I'm good.
Awesome. Let's talk data engineering. So you were on a couple weeks ago, Chris. Good to see you again.
Thanks for having me. 2 weeks have flown by. It seems like just yesterday we were talking.
Yeah, it does feel like just yesterday we were talking. We get a special Data Nerd Herd episode with Chris coming out in a couple weeks, so stay tuned for that. So this week, last time we talked about sort of hinted at data architecture and what data architects do, and I think we want to dive into data architecture and what data architects do in a bit more detail. So what's on your mind, guys?
Oh, too much, but we'll keep it focused on the data architecture stuff probably. Yeah, I mean, after that show a couple of weeks ago, I started thinking about what I'd done when I had that title, data architect, and what was the main activities, and looking at some of the job specs that you see out there, and I'm thinking, they list the technologies, and I'm thinking, did I really use my OBIE skills that much when I was talking to these people? Is it really that relevant? And so yeah, it got me thinking of what I think of the main activities I used to do, and did a post in prep for this thing. So there's some interesting views of people out there which we could touch on as well. So yeah.
It seems to be a real struggle to even define what a data architect is, frankly. I mean, it's quite interesting because it's this very important position and title in the enterprise, and a lot of effort has gone into these standards groups, like Open Group, trying to define exactly what it is. But if you dig into the definitions, it's very slippery. It's like you try to grab onto it and it slips out of your hand like a fish or something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was trying to relate it back to what I call proper architects, the people that build buildings. So
yes,
and taking things from what they do. And an example I was thinking is the old days of building a stately home. You built the middle bit, then you built the left, the west wing, or you built the east wing, and then maybe you put your ballroom on the back. But the architect at the beginning, he had that vision of he didn't have the money to do it straight away. He probably didn't have the manpower to it, but over 20, 30 years, that vision was realized. So I think if you take that sort of viewpoint and think about it in this the world of data platforms now, is how do you build your main piece, your main block, your foundations, to make sure that you can still build your west wing without it sinking in the sand, or build the right wing and it be fit for purpose and do what you want. So yeah, I think it's that visionary part that the data architect's doing, just understanding the direction you're going, and maybe holding that compass would be another one. Is okay, right, we're going this way. This is the right direction, and helping. Well, not ordering people, but taking people on that journey with you.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, so where do you think data architecture fits into maybe the broader, I think, definition of enterprise architecture? So
I mean, depending on the size of the organization, of how many layers of that architecture you need or are going to be useful. I think it's about the storytelling that each of those layers of architecture need to do, and the audiences for them. So, for example, a large oil company or something like that, you're going to need that enterprise architect level that can talk the CEO's language or the C-suite's language. You can take into account their business strategy of what's going on. You may be able to factor in some sort of IPO or some other thing that isn't common knowledge, and make sure, because of that, I need to make sure I'm multi-cloud, or I need to make sure I don't go down. But using that knowledge to find the right path, and then pass that down to the next level. I would probably call it the solution data architect. Well, I don't know if you'd have another layer, solution architect, than a data architect, or just say maybe a data architect that provides solutions. Really, I think that's another view. But you could even go lower than that. I mean, so are you going to go around to having a data integration architect? You're going to have a metadata architect. I'm trying to think of, So it's how fine that goes, and I think the size of the organization, complexity of that organization will dictate. If you do need to go, that deep. I mean, you spoke the other day, Joe, about machine learning data engineers. You know, is it going to be now we have to have a machine learning data architect? You know, he's looking about how Jupyter Notebooks is going to be fitting into it, where you're going to load your ML ops and designing all that piece. So the same things happen. Well, the same things happen to architecture that is happening to those other ones. It's fragmenting, and I think that the complexity of the platforms now, the big movement in technology to cloud and platform as a service is, it's defining those more specialisms within that architecture space.
And I assume just the footprint is growing. In other words, more people are working on this data. Like companies are spending more money, more resources on machine learning projects. I mean, 20 years ago, you had your operational databases, and then maybe you had a data warehouse, and maybe you had some assets beyond that. And now you've got, I mean, it started with Hadoop, but now we've got all these cloud assets, all kinds of data projects, machine learning projects, deep learning going on in the cloud. Like that, it creates, I would assume, I would like to get your perspective on this, Chris, going back a ways, but I would assume this makes the data architect's job way, way more complicated because now there are far more stakeholders. I mean, the tools are easier to stand up, but you're responsible to a lot more people, and a lot more is expected of data architects now.
Yeah, definitely. They've become the Swiss Army knife of needing. And I think the soft skills are much more important. And I see myself as an arbitrator a lot of time, negotiator, providing that that team community piece of looking at those opportunities to either realize something on your maturity of your data strategy, or realize that if these two guys collaborate, they can both benefit from each other's activities. So I see the data architecture being a pivotal point, a pivotal person within the data community, being that project Sherpa. You're there. You're holding their hand at some point, advisory, let them go off their own. You come back round, make sure they're okay. And you're going on the journey with them, and it's all hands to deck when needed. If you needed to go and knock up a quickie entity relationship model or something to explain it, or even go and do some DDL, create some DDL or some or whatever's needed to get things going and help them on that journey.
Yeah, some interesting thoughts. I mean, what are your thoughts? I saw the phrase data governance 2.0 being floated around the other day. Curious if we're sort of entering maybe data architecture 2.0 as well. It seems like there's a different version. I mean, there's a version of architecture, I think, that was really constrained to larger enterprises that had a need for this stuff. But I think architecture now is becoming kind of more front and center, even for data engineers. Like a good data engineer should know how to architect, among a slew of other things that they should know. But I would say a data engineer who can't properly architect stuff is at a huge disadvantage. But this wasn't always the case. It was kind of like, based on your job. Again, these things are typically reserved for larger companies that had just, tons of roles and tons of work to do. So
another thought I've got on this really is reusability. So an architect should be defining patterns, like best practice for certain scenarios, which should be some maybe product agnostic, but it is solving a problem, and maybe you can have some development patterns or design patterns that fit that one, and it's having those things that templated, reusable, well documented, well communicated, and even become that crowdsourcing of enhancements to it. Someone knows you've got a nice logging framework out there for one part of the team, and extend it, build on top of it. So I think something I have seen that hasn't always been the way is engineers love coding sometimes, and
don't they ever?
and sometimes you give him maybe here's a product that can do that for you. And well, this is more fun. I don't want to just go and map to endpoints I want to see if I can do something cool. I want to open source this. Which you need that sort of inspiration and that freedom to do those things. But I think the architect brings that as be so silly. Don't go and do that. There's an open source on that does much better than you could even do quicker. You'll make us behind time. Let's think smarter.
Yeah, completely agree. I mean, yeah, that's a good point. Like, part of the architect's job is to steer that creative energy in a good direction. Because, like, I don't know, Joe, how many different orchestration frameworks have we seen developed internally at clients? It's like, you know, all these open source orchestration frameworks do have their limitations, but like, why don't you go contribute to something that other people are using where a lot of the work has been done rather than reinventing the wheel?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, some companies should realize that they you know, they're not a software development company, or that's not their background. They're right. You know, they're a supermarket, or they're a high street chain or something. Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's focus on like reusing something out there. I say adding back to the community is a great way of getting that enthusiasm into your team out there. You know, they're doing that thing of actually adding some other value and feeling that.
Mm-hmm. I guess, how do you feel about the role of an architect these days when there's a lot of different options for technologies and tools and so forth? I mean, how do you think the role of an architect is evolving with respect to the more plug-and-play type stuff?
Yeah, and something I found over the years of doing different roles, but still, I used to freelancing up until started went full focus with leading edge IT. So I'd never stayed anywhere that long, or to get that training package, or I'm going to learn that new technology. What I found is, if I ever stayed in a company that they kept me because of my internal knowledge of that process, or more than my domain knowledge or my technical knowledge for a certain product, then it was time for me to move on. And I'd always try and look for something that would either take me out of my comfort zone, so go something, okay, I'm not as strong in that, or that industry, maybe a new industry. So keeping fresh keeping fresh and up to date with best practice and architectural concepts. I think LinkedIn's got some good stuff out there as well. I don't see that much about. You see much more discussion about development and engineering talks than you do about architecture. But to go back to that point of the products, selecting what products you use, and we don't want to go full back to the scenario where the guy's just had been taken out to a really nice steak restaurant with Oracle, and they've gone to take on a yacht, and after that, or another vendor. I'm not. Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, Oracle would never do that.
So and then after that, you get told that, there you go, like, I've just selected all this software for you to go and build this platform that I haven't given you any requirements for, and you haven't got the infrastructure to put it on yet, by the way. So here you go. So go back to that community thing, So don't have one person living in a little tower somewhere making the decision for the whole organization without getting them involved.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, we always say that architecture is a full contact sport, just like data engineering is too.
Yeah, it's kind of a tug of war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is it a tug of war though, or is it more?
Depends on the organizational structure, maybe. I mean, but definitely, I think a good architect does have to rein people in a bit, right? Like, you don't want your teams running on all the clouds, and you don't want them running 5 different versions of hosted Spark platforms, right? Like, that makes absolutely no sense. Like, guys, look, I'm going to give you flexibility, but let's make some decisions together, and then at the end of the day, like, you guys can vote, but I have the arbitration power here. Even though I'm not going to just hand down decisions to you from on high. Like, that would be good architecture, and it's full contact, like you said, Joe.
Yeah. I think tug of war. I think it's tug of war with more than 2 ends. So it's a rope with about five or six different endpoints on it. That you've got some very strong people on one side.
Interesting. What are some skills an architect needs?
People skills, I think, is one. I think the other one is, and one of the questions that came up was, and I think I put it out there, is, do you need to be a data engineer first to become a data architect? and I'll use old money or old terms for it. So ETL developer for me, for example, could have I gone from that without? I don't think I could have, to be honest. I don't think I wouldn't have been able to communicate to. I wouldn't understand the impact of a change. I wouldn't understand the time it might take a development team to go and build that, or maybe the dependencies that I'd have to consider, that or things that may have gone wrong in the past to look out for. So battle scars. So I think I like that is that over the years you build up the battle, and it's that experience that I think you bring as that architect. You still want to know how that technology works and understand it in a way, and talk to people about it, but maybe you don't want to go through and coding 4,000 lines of Python code to go and do some new something cool and funky. So someone called it architects are failed developers, but I obviously disagree.
That's pretty funny, actually.
Yeah.
So I think the other thing I'm thinking is, like, we talk about all these architects. There's definitely a joke in there. It's like, how many architects does it take to change a light bulb or something? It's like, you need a light bulb architect. You need the electric. You need the chair architect. It's going to put the chair in place. You have the light switch architect to make sure the lights off. So it's
I think, Martin Fowler has this very compelling idea that architects should be leaders, should be able to talk to company leadership, technical leadership, but also should have the ability to sit down and pair program with someone, even if they don't necessarily know the programming language, just to talk through software best practices and how to design a process and how to design for performance and orthogonality and all these basic concepts. And so I suppose the same things should apply in the data architecture domain.
I think they should. Then the article you're referencing is Martin Fowler's 2003 article, What Architects Do. Fantastic article. I think it still holds a lot of weight, which is funny because he introduces the article by saying he was very reluctant to define architecture and what an architect, for precisely the reason it's a very mushy definition. It's funny because I think I know a lot of people with architect as a title, and when I ask them, define what an architect is, Nobody can do it.
Is that why no one's been on the show up until now? no one can give any details of it.
Yeah, no. And if you, as we were researching for a book, data architecture, for example, try and define it. Try and define it in a way that makes sense today as well. It's a slippery topic. We'll add that to the backlog, maybe.
No
pun intended. Yeah.
Well, and I think engineering types like us tend to get way too down in the weeds. In fact, when we were first writing this chapter, we started talking about details of clusters and different update rates of scalable systems versus transactional systems, and wait a minute, this isn't really what architecture is. Somehow you need to rise to a higher level abstraction, but still understand the stuff down here. It's tough.
We've taken cloud architect exams too, in GCP and AWS. So I think we know what's expected from a cloud architect, and yet when we went to write, it's damn, these definitions actually don't hold weight, because there's more than just a technical aspect of things. I think, as you pointed out earlier, there's a people management aspect, and that's probably the most important thing, is the ability to work with people, communicate, herd cats, as they say, and get everybody moving in it. So it's kind of like being a rancher, I guess. So more than a lot of things. I think it's going back to that storytelling thing. It's being a storyteller, but to tell the right story to the right audience. And something I struggled with at one point when I was doing my architect Visio days, going out with just drawing your architecture, making sure that you had all of the layers of the architecture, the lines of the flows. You had make sure it was going the right way. And then when I used to give it to my manager or something, he used to go, right, 5 boxes, bang, bang, bang. And but no, it doesn't quite work like that. No. The audience is going to see this. They don't need to know that there's actually a two-way API that's going in there, so for me, I didn't like seeing a diagram that wasn't, but it's not right. So it was. So now I do. I refer to it as Janet and John diagram. So it's just like a simple thing, a bit of color on it, and then take that to lay it down, and then that will be the right story for a certain audience.
The next one will be for another one, and just don't get your pictures mixed up, because if you try and show the Janet and John one to the developer, they just think you don't know what you're doing.
Well, and you want to avoid a Space Shuttle Challenger situation, right? Where you're hiding some really critical like security details or systems risk details that actually you need to communicate to your executive team in some form, right? Like you're not communicating that, yes, we're at an unsafe temperature in this system or whatever it is, but still not trying to show them all the details so they just glaze over.
Yeah.
And so for the audience out there, if you have questions, post them in the comments on YouTube or LinkedIn. We'll get to them. What do you think? How would you define good data architecture?
One that is future proofing to some degree. So it's you're looking ahead. You know, you're thinking, okay, right. Well, I think knowing you've put some foundations in place that's going to give you that ability to pivot or to add that other product or to react to the business when they say, oh, by the way, we're just onboarding 5,000 new clients because we just acquired another company. Can you go and put that in your CRM system? And so having something that you know that you have a roadmap for each of those components to how you can get level up on them. So yeah, I think that would be one of the things I'd say would be a good architect. It's that Swiss Army knife thing, isn't it? It's just, and having that ability to fill in the gaps wherever they are, and to communicate with the different people that have different viewpoints or other things maybe more relevant to them.
Got a question here. Hi, chaps. Great discussion. Thank you. With data architecture, what are the important things to consider with an AI solution? What is the sequence of thinking for AI? What do you guys think?
Matt, you were talking earlier about the platforms getting more and more complex, and before you had your data warehouse, your operational systems. So
yeah.
that separation is now two-way, and it's now very interlinked. So I think I think one thing before you start running, maybe doing AI, start with good data management. I think that's the first thing before you move forward. But that clouded line now of okay, so where does ML, the machine learning role stop? Is it operational now? Is it the analytics part? And there's a two-way contract now, is where you would just the operational systems would just pass the data down to the analytics. Now there's crunching going on, decisions need to be made from that analysis, which is needed real time by the operational systems.
Yeah, and I mean, this is probably go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was getting. Great question, though. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably a great time to bring up the AI hierarchy of needs, right, Joe? Like maybe screen share that real quick. I think very much
bring it up. We'll just reference it. It's a pyramid with AI at the top. Data and solid data foundation at the bottom. I would say build the solid data foundation first. So what is that? Pipelines, good storage, good transformation capabilities, good analytics. I think all these things need to be prerequisite to doing great AI. It usually doesn't work the other way around unless you, I think, have a very particular use case. Other things to consider, the tooling space in the AI space right now is like insane. There's a lot of activity. I would say definitely go for modularity. Don't buy a monolithic system if at all possible, because things are changing so fast. And there's so many new projects coming out. It's a great time to be a user. It's also a terrible time to be a user because there's nothing consolidated. So I'd say just be picky and be willing to get out of stuff really quick. So hopefully that answers the question. Anything else?
I mean, I know, Joe, you're very fond of talking about how all the old enterprise themes are coming back, like data management, for example. Data management, metadata, master data management, all the stuff that, modern data engineers kind of hate talking about. Like if you came out of Google or something, you're like, oh, that's awful. You just like plug your nose and look the other way. I think that the opportunity now, though, is that we can have all those things without having to buy into a big monolith. And that was kind of the ugly part of older enterprise architectures, to what you were saying earlier, Chris. It's like they would just hand you Oracle. Here you go. This is all you're going to use for everything. And now you can mix and match pieces, hopefully with some constraints. So it's not total Wild West. And you can plug in these new pieces that do things like metadata management, orchestration, master data management, all these really critical things as businesses mature, and they need to understand their data better and maintain consistency and quality.
Yep. Yeah, all the old school stuff is new again. That's what I'm saying. I think there's data architecture 2.0, probably data governance 2.0, probably just, whatever you want to throw into it, 2 or 3.0. We got another question here from Stephanie Davis. How does the role of a data architect vary from startups to enterprise and consulting in between? Have at it.
I've had visibility and experience in both of those ones. So startups much more fun. You're going to see the results of your decisions quicker, and decisions get made quicker. And you probably need to do less convincing to get something moving forward. And you'll get exposure to more things. We were talking earlier about that role of the architect and how many different pieces there are in that startup. You're going to get that visibility of them all, and either specialize or build on top of it. I think for enterprising, it's still is a vital role within a very large business, and you need to probably be a little more. It's a ship you're steering over a long time. And yeah, you're not gonna be whooping after getting a decision after a week. Maybe a year or something to go through five review boards and a few changes, and then you're there. But it'll be a good moment when you get there. Yeah.
I mean, let's suppose you're in a very traditional big enterprise, maybe $10 billion, some big business. I mean, how would you, as a data architect, carve out more flexibility for your teams? How would you go to the executive board and say, hey, we have good architecture, but really we need our teams to be able to move faster in certain domains because we're really slowing ourselves down with all these approval processes. Can we have it both ways? Can we have security and data quality, but also allow the teams to move faster?
Yeah, I think it's that ingredient. We're using data kitchen sort of terminology. It's having those ingredients that the people have the pre-prepared recipes, and then they can go and cook up what they need. So self-service test data, representative data but subsetted or things like that. Ability for maybe break glass authentication to get into things when something's wrong. You don't have to go through loads of process. I think that those having that's in place. I think the other thing is agreement of the line in the sand. Okay, so what is your as a service? So you've gone and bought a platform service, but you've made it, hardening it for your company, and it's what is owned by maybe a core team, and it needs to be as little as possible because you don't want to have everything going through that central core team. So that team should be there creating automation and things like that will allow those teams to go and self-serve. The problem though with that approach, if you don't get that put in place, you'll get every single team trying to solve that same problem themselves. You won't standardize in how you set up users or roles or things like that. You'll never be able to get to do that automation piece because now it's you're not able to get that traceability, and getting authorization now is impossible because no one knows who owns what. So I think that's another critical thing really.
And so you're almost talking about like a sandbox environment inside of standardized tools. So you could almost say, okay, we're going to standardize on Databricks or Snowflake or BigQuery. And then teams within that, this idea of the data mesh architecture, like teams have flexibility within that environment, but they can't just go off and maybe stand up a whole bunch of different tools that no one else can understand.
Or maybe they can.
Maybe they can. Yeah, it depends on what level of flexibility.
I think the data mesh also supports that philosophy as well. Yeah. So because only serving data to end customers, right? It should be almost agnostic in some ways, but
it's that speed to market thing, isn't it? It's what you can do there. But I'll go back to that community thing. So if, for example, two different teams working on an ingestion pipeline, they both got great ideas. They both want to. If they had come together and they go, yeah, cool, yes, all right, let's do this. Let's work on this together collaboratively, or I'll take what you've got, I'll enhance it for what I need, and now it's it's a little bit of open source framework within your own company, and it all starts with that community. It just comes back to that. Let everyone else know what you're doing. You're going to get people that will want to collaborate and share on these things, and you'll end up with more standardization than you thought.
Adam has a comment here. Sandbox environments and enterprise standard tools innovation lab.
So it's a hot topic of this one for sandboxes. So definition of sandbox. So does a sandbox have production data in it? So if a sandbox is having production data in it, it needs to have a level of controls around it. Are you going to allow people to go and build up shadow IT services on top of your sandbox, and then you're never going to know it's being used? And one day the CEO decides that he goes to go check some report that's come from some dodgy route of getting it, which is not actually been gone via a production sort of release. And now he's raising a support ticket for they haven't got clue. They haven't got clue what this system does. So having it as an innovation lab, yes, that is a great approach to at least have that standardized container. That
a big enterprise, definitely. I think a startup is inherently an innovation lab to begin with.
Right.
Innovation lab's production in a startup.
Basically. Yeah, and he says innovate on use cases and data, not tools. I tend to agree with this as well. Yeah. Got a question here from Neethu. Hope I'm pronouncing your name right. How do we gain people skills? What a data architect needs? Is it only through experiences? What do you guys think?
I think it's. I'll go back to the passion thing we said before. You got to really love talking about it and love communicating it. I think being pragmatic, I think, is another thing that we touched on before. Is seeing things from seeing the view from other people's position. I think an example I use is security having one view. Your product team want to release something to a new customer, and you've got your engineering team that want to do things in a different way. You're sitting in between all them and saying, look, come on, let's not have that security policy because that's stupid, and we're not going to be able to sell the product. And the engineering team say, look, come on, just work this way slightly differently and you'll still get the same result. So probably empathy. I like my approach is humor. if you get people laughing with you or you joke around with them,
David Brent or something, or
I'm nowhere near as funny as David Brent, but he is very funny.
It's the 20th. I think the 20th anniversary of the British office too. By the way.
Oh really?
I might have to give it another watch.
Yeah, he's from the town I used to.
I would say for people skills, just do exactly the opposite of like Michael Scott or David Brent do in The Office, and that's probably like a good litmus test for people skills.
Maybe. Yeah.
Watch that and don't do that. What they do. Yeah. They get along fine with people. So. But really, I think also experience. There's also good books. I would say How to Win Friends and Influence People. Great book. I read a lot of books on negotiation. Communications was one of those things. I think it's a fine art that you should try and craft. But you also got to be yourself, right? You just can't be some stodgy cartoon version or cutout of some corporate type or something, right? I mean, you got to be yourself at the end of the day. I think you just communicate a lot better. You're just authentic, and I hate that word. It's so overused, but it's true. So, any thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, for you, Joe, I know you've been very involved in the tech community, like for 20 years in meetups and things, right? Like Salt Lake City Python, Utah Data Engineering, and of course, a lot of the things you're doing now. How has that helped you in terms of development of people skills? I think there are a variety of domains of people skills. There's negotiation, there's like persuasion, there's teaching, there's organization.
It's just fun talking to people. I don't know. I mean, I like talking to people, meeting new people, letting people gate crash our show. It's a lot of fun. So, but it's one of those things where I just think I can always learn something from somebody else, right? If you approach it from that perspective, I think that's a good, people skill to have, just good communication style. Just try and, approach it from a perspective of learning what you can from somebody. There's always, somebody always knows something more than you do. That's how it is. You're not a know-it-all. If you are, please don't be. So there's just a lot you can learn, I think, from people, and just communicating in a way that I think sparks interest from the other person is how I approach things. And so that always keeps me motivated to keep meeting new people and just learn from them. So that I feel it's become a part of me, right? So community and tech and speaking and all this stuff it's natural at this point. So But I also started out like as a debater in school, and just like I like to talk, run my mouth like a ton. So
I bet you used to win a lot of those debates.
What's that?
I bet you used to win a lot of those debates.
Yeah, it was actually won a lot. So got a question here. Hopefully I answered your question, Nita. It's a good question. But yeah, it's an endless journey, and I don't think you're ever done learning how to communicate. In fact, I think I still suck at communicating in a lot of ways. It's always one of those things where I feel like I can keep progressing. I'm sure both you guys feel the same way.
Yeah, definitely. Every day.
Every day. Stephanie asks, what's your perspective on limiting or consolidating the duplication of work from different teams, especially with privacy?
That's interesting. Yeah, because that kind of loops back to some of the earlier themes, right? Discussion of sandboxes, of trying to steer teams in common directions. I wonder if this is fundamentally a leadership problem. I mean, I suppose one of the data architect's roles is to kind of suss out what's going on throughout the company so they can identify overlapping projects.
Yeah, you have somebody have emotional attachment on one direction or another, and then that's when you need an architect to come in to say, look, this doesn't make sense. Let's go through the capabilities that we need for these things. Okay, right, that does this one. Let's make a pragmatic decision. Back to that one again. Yeah, but I mean the privacy thing is a really interesting one, and something that I've been looking at quite a lot recently. It's getting engineers or developers or teams to work in a slightly different way now because of privacy. So, you don't have to go and see, everyone's naming in clear. It can be representative. You don't have to have maybe the full email address. You can just have the tokenized outbound part and the other piece. Hashes are great for these things. If you've got a hash that's been created, you can join on the hash. You don't need to. So, just maybe sometimes with the changing of that way of work, you can still keep security happy. You can still be quick enough to develop, and you've minimized risk for your organization as well.
What are your thoughts on data sharing?
Sorry?
What are your thoughts on data sharing with respect to this question?
I think data sharing, you should have some sort of a kite marking on the data that's being shared, because if someone's, you don't know the credibility of that. I mean, I know obviously Snowflake does a lot of that data sharing out there, and there is some credibility that's gone into making sure that it is. But you are, if you're going to go and use an open source data set from somewhere and use it for making decisions, the data set could be biased. It may not be accurate. So I think use with caution. I think would be my unless you're buying it from Experian or Nelson's or someone like that. You've probably got an SLA with them that if they give you some bad data, you've got something to raise with them. But use it in the right way.
Yeah, these are interesting points, because I think even internally within a company, you run into this issue, right? Like one data science team derives some kind of data set through a pipeline, and someone else tries to consume it, and they don't understand how it was processed, in what ways it's clean, in what ways it might be dirty, and so the results may vary, to say the least.
Yeah.
Synthetic data is another one I would say try and use too, as much as possible. You're starting to see more companies, projects around synthetic data, Y data. From Fabiana Clement. She's doing a fantastic job with synthetic data, but I would say try and use that too. If you don't need to use production data, then use fake data. You'll get the same thing.
I've been playing around with something called Mockaroo.
Mockaroo is so dope.
So it's got loads of templates. It's not that expensive, and you get free up to 1,000 rows for each data set. So you can get a baseline and just go and duplicate it up, so possibly, or spend $50 of very, very well spent.
Good project. You should support the guy if you can. He's doing some good work there. Hopefully that answers your question, Steph. Mike Nash asks, what data management, what are the key ways to reduce latency, especially pulling from various clouds and edge devices around the world? That's a good question.
I don't know if we can change the law, the speed of light or anything like that, but so there's always going to be some limitations. But I think having a multi-cloud strategy that how quickly data is moving in those areas. So a good architect would be able to say that, okay, this is where you're streaming the data from. This is the closest point from that. That's where we do our operational stuff on it, and any reference data. I think data has gravity. I think I like to use the term. Is like bring everything to reduce the latency by taking any compute or processing to where the data is.
I mean, if you're Google, you just build your own network, right? Like they did, and then you have like petabit scale, instant fiber optic, network around the world, right? You could use GCP for, I think, a lot of this and reduce your latency, honestly. But if you're not, then what are your thoughts, Matt?
Yeah, so I mean, down to what you guys are saying, I think there's a lot to be said for just data location strategy. And there's multi-cloud, but there's also an advantage to single cloud with maybe a multi-cloud fallback or something like that. Or putting different types of workloads on different clouds depending on the latency needs. But yeah, there are advantages to putting a lot of stuff on GCP, for example, because you can get to the data fairly quickly if you need to. If you know, okay, most of my data is going to be in the West, let's put it in the West region, and I can get very quick responses that way.
I think there's more to unpack here. What about storage and its impact on latency?
I mean, again, back to that the S3 or multi-region strategy. So if you just make sure that if you're using S3 as that source or something that uses that data on top of it on S3, you just make sure that it's within that region, or you've gone multi-region as well. So I think the other thing is data sovereignty. So there's some things you can't change of taking data out of certain locations. So some things even with you may not be able to put it where you want it in the best place because of limitations on that. So
it's true. I think it also comes down to the database. Maybe if you're using a database, figure out which one has a low retrieval rate. That could have an impact. But I think the networking I/O is always going to be the lowest common denominator in terms of access, right? So it doesn't matter. You can have the fastest database in the world, but if your network sucks, then it is what it is, and it's physics at some point, right?
Yeah.
So
and maybe a lot of it is just back to architecture again. Like, what is the requirement of the project you're working on? Like, do you need very quick responses, or do you need to run large queries? Those are very different requirements, and they actually should have very different architectures depending on what you're trying to do.
Just fax everything. It's my
there you go. Yeah. Telegraph.
So got a question here. How metadata, or in other words, data knowledge sharing can be achieved across enterprises where certain knowledge about remain with a SME. Your thoughts?
Very, very apt question. I'm not too sure if I know who that one's from actually, but you need to crowdsource that. So basically, you're not going to get two guys in a corner that's going to go through and create your data dictionaries and go and attribute everything and work out any alternative business terms for it, having one definition for customer lifecycle value or whatever it is, and that needs to be done as a community. And I think the only way of doing that is with a tool. Otherwise, you've got spreadsheets being emailed around the place.
So
I think a good data enterprise data catalog that has lineage, stewards owning the attribution as well as the quality metrics. We work with a company called Elation.
We just partnered with them too.
Yeah,
good company.
The Snap again, isn't it? So it's. I mean, there's the Calibras of the world. I call it the Rolls Royce. I don't think everyone needs that, but Elation's a good midpoint, very extendable.
What are your thoughts, Matt? Metadata first architecture too comes to mind. I mean, I think there's metadata 2.0 as well. There's traditional metadata, but then there's also stuff we've been talking with Raghu about, which I think is really relevant.
I think we're seeing a convergence between orchestration and metadata. There are definitely some technology solutions to these problems, and by that I don't mean that Elation is going to solve all your problems, but it's like part of the solution in conjunction with the human aspects. But so data coral is a very interesting technology in terms of building all of the orchestration around metadata, and so kind of solving two problems at once. And I get the sense that other orchestration engines are pursuing a similar philosophy, like Dagster, for example, by really elevating the position of metadata in the way you handle orchestration and other processes.
I mean, that's the first level topic, that we're talking about in architecture is actually metadata in architecture.
Yeah.
Not orchestration itself, right? Like we've really
sure.
emphasized that.
Yeah, it's a big topic. I think you're going to see a lot more about metadata, not just in the traditional sense, but in very, I guess, ubiquitous senses as well. So.
Yeah, I think the other thing that was quite relevant for us as well at the moment is and maybe quite good to say about the metadata architects is, if you all this metadata with these different places, so you've got your cloud platform, you've got maybe an ELT platform, maybe you've got your data pipeline platform. Now you've got an orchestration tool that's doing it as well. You may have some other activities that are happening like previous batch performance and things like that. So you've got all these very rich data sets that, unless you architected it in a way, I need to have that batch Airflow ID that I'm going to carry forward, and I can be able to put it on there. I'm going to be able to take the query ID from one location, store it. That means I can be able to get that and join it back. So that's something that you probably won't get your average developer they're going to be looking at one. And that's no offense to them, but they're either looking at the Airflow piece or they're looking at the other piece. It's having that vision to join the pieces together.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it seems like this new generation of tools that we're seeing, just a huge number of startups focused on these kinds of high-level problems that in the past, individual developers tended not to think about so much. The cool thing was always like Flink or Spark. It's like, okay, those are awesome tools, but just like you're saying, like, how do we glue all those pieces together? And
data engineering is becoming more enterprisey.
It is, yeah. But with more flexible tools, which is what I find very exciting.
Yeah, it's not like Calibra, great tool, but you can't afford it normally.
Right.
Rolls Royce, yeah.
Can't afford a Rolls Royce. So,
the lovely carpets inside the Calibra. So that's
yeah, the nice cars though.
Very nice hood ornaments, lovely hood ornaments.
How do you work out if it is bad code rather than architecture that is creating a bottleneck issue? It's a fantastic question. Yeah. What do you guys think?
So if you can't go to the logs to go and find out what's happened and get to them easy, it's bad architecture. If you can go to the logs and you can see that they're doing full table scans, I think it's bad code. So that would be my acid test.
Yeah. I mean, I think this often is the difference between having proper orchestration, not proper orchestration. And so by proper orchestration, I do mean exactly similar to what you were saying, Chris, like a system that monitors everything and keeps processes kicking off. If you're just running a bunch of cron jobs, that's not great orchestration. And then you're going to have no idea why jobs are failing because there's essentially no monitoring, no logging happening, no optimized timing. When jobs finish, the next one kicks off, that sort of thing.
Is bad code a symptom of bad architecture?
It could be, especially if part of the role of a data architect is to mentor their data engineers, then it seems like it would be.
Yeah, it depends how long you've been in the company. You can't be paying for the 3 years of people that are before you. But it's something that the architect should be looking to help solve.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Set standards and so forth.
Yeah.
I think so.
Well, no one likes the word standards, though. Yeah.
Oh,
best practice advice that we encourage you to use.
Guilds. You need guilds, so you're communicating internally. Using that. That's one of the terms that's thrown about.
Do you think business analyst field has a future? I'm confused with my life. Sorry, you're confused with your life.
We can't help
you with that part. We can help you with the first part of the question. So, what do you guys think? Do business analysts have a future?
If businesses exist, you need a business analyst. You're always going to need them. Your developers want to code. They don't want to go and chat to the operational team to find out what this attribute means, how it fits into a business process.
Remember when data science is coming into vogue, they thought analysts were going to go the way of the dinosaur, and it has not been the case. I think analysts, more than anything, have come back with a vengeance, and they realize machine learning is like really hard to do out of the box without data, without good analytics, without a good foundation. Like, you ain't going to do machine learning, so you need to go to analysts. And data scientists I've seen, they become analysts as well. So, what do you think, Matt?
Yeah. I mean, I tend to agree. Even if you have a really good reporting platform, right, and really great dashboards, there are going to be questions that business leaders want answered that the machine learning models aren't providing explanations for, and the data engineers don't want to answer themselves. They're more interested in like working with data at scale, not digging into a particular question that someone has. And so the way I see it, that's kind of the role of the business analyst. Now, to be fair, I have seen in some organizations where the business analyst is stuck doing a bunch of rote work that really should be automated, like just generating the same reports again and again. In that case, like you may want to start looking for another job or another position, because really you shouldn't have to do that kind of grunt work. Like that should be
providing
automated.
Insights, right?
Yeah,
Not just generating reports. If you're generating reports, you don't have a future in that.
Right.
And I think you should be confused about your life at that point.
But if you can answer new questions, if an executive can come to you and say, hey, I see this dashboard, but like where our sales are down, but where are they down? Like which demographics are we down with? Or can we try to get some answers about what parts of the world we're losing sales in? And then that's the business analyst job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's going to continue to be popular. I mean, like, data warehouses are popular again. Why are they popular? Analytics. So those are also written off for dead for a bit too with the data scientists, right? It's like, oh, Spark's gonna, all these tools are gonna replace, data warehouses. These are old school.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, I think anytime something's written off for dead, I would say it's got a future, except for I'm trying to think of a counterexample to that.
Does COBOL have a future 10 years from now? It might. I mean, it just keeps going and going.
Yeah. I think you'll probably find some big banks still be running on COBOL in a few years. They'll be taking people out of retirement to just go. They'll be earning more money than us, like to demand rates for the work that we're doing.
Maybe we should all just form a COBOL consultancy right now.
Yeah.
COBOL data consultancy.
It's the future. The audience, ask more questions if you have them. Otherwise, it's any other thoughts on architecture?
I've got one more that we didn't cover before, and that's having that product-based team approach. So you don't need to have an architect in every single team. So it's that they should provide oversight across a number of different product teams, and again they can start brokering those. Oh, you should see what that team's doing. Oh, you should standardize on this, and that's really helps that community thing as well. So the architect role is not needed as much now as it ever has been. It sits as an advisory role that oversees multiple development teams.
What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think what we sometimes see is that the data architects are very detached from the individual units in the organization and they need to be interacting with. And that's where leadership, organization, community really come in addition to helping make global decisions, actually bringing people together to coordinate and then give their input on those decisions and what they're actually trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm. It's a full contact sport, right?
Yeah. So, it should be, right? It should not be hands off. It shouldn't be ivory tower.
The days of waterfall, I think, are like dead and gone, thank God. So,
yeah.
Which means you have to be, I guess, good at being an engineer or be more empathetic with people as well. It's just days of like lobbing things over the wall. I think it's gone. So.
I think knowing about that waterfall, what used to happen, is a good sort of like understanding. Okay, right, we don't want to go back to that, but let's be iterative. Let's think of those things that came up before that were useful. Not maybe not every single artifact, but some of the things are useful to helping you on your journey.
Got a question here. Should data analytics data model move left, i.e. considered in OLTP systems to enable a real-time analytics to take a benefit of cloud compute and store being separated? Go for it.
So I would just have my OLTP replicated across, keep the same structures, put some operational stuff on top of it to give you that real time without having to move a whole analytical model back into OLTP, which wouldn't be designed to run like that there. Nope. That'd be my view.
What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, I guess the whole thing is that in a cloud environment, it's more flexible. And so you do have more of an opportunity to try different things. Like you're not just going to set up an Oracle read replica of your main Oracle system. It's very expensive to do that. But if it's just Postgres, hosted on AWS, then you can try it out and see what works well. So,
yeah. Well, until Snowflake make an OLTP database, then
that's right. Give them time.
Yeah.
Be part of the data cloud.
They'll also make fax machines too.
That's right.
And good t-shirts.
They make good t-shirts.
Did you iron your t-shirt, Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't have mine on today. So,
That would have been funny if we did.
We'll coordinate next time.
Yeah, awesome. Well, cool. I think it's a good time to wrap up. Thanks, Chris, as always.
It's great to have you.
Yeah, do this in a couple weeks again. So thanks to the audience. Great questions. And we'll see you guys later. Have a good one.
And good luck to England in the upcoming game.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Match.
Proving this is live now, aren't we? We're proving it's live.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Take care, guys.
Take care.
Bye.